Well, here we are back again, just a little bit late. People hopping in and out of the studio, which is exactly the theme that we have. We love people to drop by. If you're in the region, if you're from the region, because we know we've got a lot of overseas viewers, but just drop in and say hello. Richard did this morning, our barrister, who keeps us up to date with what's going on in the Crown Court over there. But anyway, for the moment, let's just take a hop back into the past and look at what Lewes was and what it did in days gone by.
Here we go. Mirador television on the loose again. I want to say quirky, but it's really quite weird. Oh my.
Lovely scene, isn't it? Beautiful green grass, blackberry bushes surrounding the lawn. Peaceful.
The chaps, gliding a bowling ball across the cropped turf. Couldn't be more pleasant. But this bowling green was originally the tilting ground for the castle. A bit like the local football club, Norman knights turned up regularly to practice cutting off ears, piercing armour with pike or sword. Or even more dramatically, they charged at one another with pointed lances, determined to knock an opponent to the ground, ready to perform the coup de grace, that last fatal plunge of the sword in the unguarded bit of flesh, the throat.
Makes me feel quite faint. But the Knights of 1100 had to be honed to military perfection.
Not only was there the odd disgruntled Saxon around, but even his own side could give the king a rough time. And indeed they did. But before we go to another bloody incident on the Lewes High Street, let's stay with the tilting ground for a moment. In the 1700s, the soldiers, who had wielded their swords with such skill, discovered guns and started shooting one another. That more or less ended the fun of charging at one another with horses. And so this bit of real estate was up for grabs, and the local crown bowlers seized the opportunity in 1751 and turned tilting into bowling.
But this is Lewes, remember. Nothing is ever what it seems.
The horses had ploughed up the ground a bit, so the surface wasn't even. You can see the bumps and ridges across the green. So the type of bowls played on this green was different to any played through the British Isles. And 500 years later, it still is.
It goes way back to medieval times, but so far as we're concerned here, we've been playing here since 1753, and there is some evidence to suggest that in the mid-1600s there was bowls played here. And we're reputed to be the oldest society, sporting society in the world. Very unique, and we're unique in many respects. I mean, firstly, the woods are unique in that most of them over 100 years old. They're lignum vitae, which is very, very hard wood, and that's the reason, of course, they've survived as long as they have. The jack is biased, which is very unusual, and the green is undulating, very undulating. There's not another green anywhere in this country so far as we know, and it makes for a very fascinating but unique game, one that we can't play any other club because there aren't any that play like this. We have a membership of 50 only because, or 55 now, because that's all the woods we have. They're handed down from person to person. We have a championship game in the summer because we have a competition throughout the year, which is within the club. And I think the winner of that is not only our own champion, but we can consider he's world champion. As long as we can retain the green, and I think we can retain the green, as long as we can do that, there's no reason why this society shouldn't continue ad infinitum almost. It's a great Lewes establishment.
So bowling in Lewes is completely unique. And very difficult. But back to blood and guts. In the last episode, I spoke of a battle between the king and some of his barons. The king, Henry III, held the castle. Now, as you can see, the castle pokes up into the sky quite a bit. The Motter is a man-made hill. And as you can see, a few hours of overtime were put in to build this pile of dirt. From the top, you can see in every direction for miles. Almost impossible to creep up without being noticed. And there was a moat to cross as well. But it's called Castle Ditch Lane, the name reflecting its purpose all those years ago. The king, rather unsportingly, had more men on his side than the barons. But it seems he fell asleep at the switch, and on that meadow over there, Simon de Montfort drew up his troops and joined battle. Fighting was fierce. After all, they'd all been on their own tilting greens, preparing for such a showdown as this. The battle was short and sharp, and the barons put the royal troops to flight. And they showed no mercy. The priory had been used as a staging post by the king's men, and they now took refuge there. It's little wonder that tilting grounds became bowling greens, because despite all that training, the king's men panicked. Screams of terror from both monks and soldiers echoed around the priory. As burning arrows thudded into thatched roofs, setting the priory buildings afire, fighting spilled over to here, our beloved but bloody High Street. Soldiers were either massacred or crushed to death as they tried to get across the bridge over the River Ouse. For the king, it was a complete disaster.
De Montfort, he split his armies up on the hills behind us in the chalk downs. He split his army into three forward not flanks, but bunches of men, groups. And they would have been around 1,500 people in them. So a lot of people. So he had 1,500 people. Then he kept men back for himself. So his left flank went off to Barkham and met Prince Edward, and they went off to Barkham. Prince Edward, being a hothead and chasing them all the way out to Barkham, away from the town, was one of the reasons the king's men lost. Because and they were mounted knights. And then the other two sets came into the town and were met by the king's army and Richard of Alameyn's army on sort of the hills around us, really, because where we are now would have been outside the town.
And it was a pretty bloody war.
It was dreadful. It was absolutely dreadful. It's hard to imagine. Lewes is a little place, and on the hills around Lewes, where most of the fighting was, there were tens of thousands of people trying to kill each other. And it was hand-to-hand close combat. And you didn't often die of wounds on the battlefield immediately. You were usually whacked with a broadsword and you would die of internal bleeding, or you would, have limbs severed and die slow death, or you would die death from infection, etc.
So there you go. Not quite one man, one vote, but some slight recognition that the divine right of kings isn't exactly what the Almighty had in mind. A spark of democracy was ignited, and it happened in Lewes. As usual, this is thirsty work, and I need to take a break. In fact, have a tipple, or perhaps go to the Lewes. Don't leave me, there's more blood and gore to come. Oh, Lewes, what a place!
I haven't got the microphone on again, have I? Dear. That's the one thing I keep on forgetting to do. Mind you, some people say, thank God, kids, because we hear enough of you. Anyway, that was part one of part two of the bloody past of a tiny town. And we will show you part two of part two tomorrow, just to keep the interest going and where we live, what we're all about, and how we get on with things. Now, I do have something else that supposedly is it's one of those things which I think that you might quite enjoy. And so what we'll do is just to actually see whether we can find this very short little thing, but it never seems to work. It is never ever quite the way that it shows up in the original, and that's why I faff around trying to find some of these things. Here, take a look at this.
The week. Hot buttered donuts. Have we forgotten how wonderful, simple, hot buttered toast can be? Ingredients simple: bread and butter. Hot buttered toast. Mirador's food tip of the week. Try it.
Yes, we've forgotten some of the delicacies that go back to when we were young. Who has hot buttered toast nowadays? Very few people. Right, it says now 9:52. We're coming up to where we take another little break at 10 o'clock. And one of the things that I would just like to mention, a couple of things really. I mean, first of all, I think it would be a good idea if we showed you what the weather is going to be like. If once again I can find that. Here we go. Yes.
I know you live every day like it's your life.
So there you are. It's going to be a nice day. And right now, even though we're going to hit a high of almost 18, it is 12 and mostly sunny. 12 degrees centigrade, mostly sunny, and looking out onto Lewes High Street and looking at the Crown Court, which is a beautiful building, actually. It's a wonderful building and one of the best preserved Crown Courts in the country, according to Richard and Philip. And it is bathed in sunlight and really does look quite magnificent. It does help give some majesty to Lewes High Street, which is suffering badly, as many high streets are. But it's not at all in good shape, and we really do need to do something about it. The local business group, Chamber of Commerce, I think it is, has formed a committee to see what they can do about the high street. We we sent a note saying you're welcome to come on and let people know what you're doing. Not heard back. Never do, as they fart and faff around. And to be quite honest with you, we are not in a position. We're not big enough. We don't have enough people to chase them. They don't want to take advantage of it. That's up to them. But don't bellyache about the things not working if you're not prepared to put yourself about. And it appears you're not. The other thing that I think that I am now getting really greatly concerned about the state of democracy. I just showed you a documentary, or part of a documentary, where through the Battle of Lewes, democracy as we know it, or at least the start of democracy as we know it, it was started in Lewes. And we should be very proud of that. But it would seem that the erosion of democracy is also starting in Lewes. First of all, and it's only the electorate that can be responsible for this, in the local elections, is the two parties that were in charge over the last 4 years, one hands down, they decimated the Tories. Now, we don't take any political view on any party in this on this television station. In fact, what we say is there should be no political parties. They should be individuals. And if I can say so, and I'm going to, whether I'm welcome to do it or not, and we don't care in this station, we say things that are probably unwelcome. I have always argued that what we should do is we should have independent councillors, no political parties. And I am sad to say that the one man who served this town extremely well, Stephen Catlin, who was a most active mayor and an active councillor, was dumped by the electorate. And that's how stupid some of the voters can be. And what have we done? We put in power two groups who, if they work together, will have a monopoly of power. And that lends itself to corruption. Oh, thank you, my boy. There, you see, I get to have a drink before anybody else is allowed to. How are you, Kevin? All right? Here you are. He makes sure that I get to taste the beer before anybody else. And it's only 4 minutes to 9. In fact, 2 minutes to 9. So here we go. Oh, yes. Very refreshing. Very nice. Well pulled, my boy. Well pulled. We've got all the skills here when it comes to beer. I taste it and he pulls it. Let's have a go at the other one. Oh, yes. Oh, well done. Well done, my good and faithful boy. Incidentally, he brings his grandson in, Ollie, from time to time. And Ollie is learning very rapidly how to look after a hotel and to fix everything, because his granddad, Kevin, is Mr. Fix-It. Believe me, he can fix anything, and does. But he particularly manages to fix the beer. There we go. Well, that helps me get back to my rant, because basically our form of democracy in this country depends upon a strong opposition to keep the party in power in check. We have no opposition now. It's been wiped out. The electorate, being as clever as they are, have managed to do that. And believe me, already there are signs that the ruling party, whoever they may be, whether that's the Lib Dems or the Greens, and particularly the Greens, are beginning to connive and go against the democratic principle. I'm told, and I have to take this on hearsay because I wasn't there, that the mayor-making ceremony the other night, in which various officials, like the Lord Lieutenant of the county and the High Sheriff, are present, has always been a non-political affair, and that the Greens managed to turn it into a political affair. And that is frightening. Okay, we're a tiny little town, but this town is important to us. There are 18 or 19,000 people in this town, and that is no mean number. And we expect our representatives to represent us and not to go down a political path and to impose upon us their beliefs. They are to represent everybody here, all 18 or 19,000 of us. And we are going to keep an eye on them to make sure that they do, because there's every indication, and not only that, it looks as if there's been a little bit of jiggery-pokery with favoritism and a little bit of corruption going on. I actually spoke to my constitutional expert on Sunday about planning permission, and apparently it's not against the law to break planning laws until you are warned that you're breaking it. So you get no warning, and you're okay. You're not in violation of the law. I mean, how stupid is that? But the unfortunate thing is that now we have, apparently, between Eastbourne and Lewes, why the heck we're in Eastbourne, God only knows. How stupid was that? But between Eastbourne and here, we have one officer who checks on planning, and his caseload is just more than he can actually manage. Now, if this new group, whoever they may be, whoever is in charge, wants to do a favor, and if it particularly is the Greens and they want us to stay green, what they will do is they will immediately find ways to spend some of that money that they collect off us to get back to 3 enforcement officers to make sure, because planning is vital in this town. Developers want to put up monstrosities. And the one thing that people say to any of us when we come in is, what a delightful town. It's still got little shops. It's not got a string of things like other towns. It has not lost its character. Or we don't want it to lose its character. And that's what needs to be defended. So come on. Let's hear from the new council what they're going to do about saving the character of this town, saving the spirit of this town. I haven't heard much about it at all from now on, or from here on. We want to hear. Oh, but no. Communication, ha, ha, ha. When they wanted our vote, they stuffed everything through the letterbox. I said that they destroyed a rainforest or two. Those people who reined me in from my excesses say, well, it would have been a reconstituted paper or a recycled paper. It doesn't matter. The paper that's recycled came from a rainforest at some stage. And we have to watch how we're pushing that. But anyway, I got a whole raft of stuff just through my letterbox alone. A whole raft of stuff proclaiming how wonderful these people were. And the moment they're back in power, what will they do? They'll try to tell us we use the internet. We use the internet to actually tell people what's going on. Well, that's not good enough, because your own statistics, if you bother to look at them, show that over 50% of people, not only in the town but in the district, are over 45. And if you go back to when the internet first really started, which was 1993, that means that there's still a lot of us that are not used to internet usage the way that youngsters are. And even then, the stats start to show that youngsters do not use the internet for information. They use it for gaming. They use it for all sorts of leisure pursuits. Nothing wrong with that, I suppose. Who am I to criticize that? But if you're talking about letting us know what's going on, what a good way to conceal it. And I think that these political parties are in the business of concealing from us what they really do behind closed doors. And that is not good enough. We want open democracy, an open council, and we haven't got it. None of the politicians have appeared on this radio station, television station. None. And it's a disgrace that they will not talk to their own voters, to their own constituents. It's a disgrace. You are a disgrace. And I hope that you'll start to look at yourselves and realize that you are to represent everybody, not those people that have a sympathy for Greens, or for that matter, sympathy for Lib Dems. You are representing everybody, and do it. Don't start to hide anything that you do on the basis that it's good for you. Now, the Harvard University review on small media, local media, said that as it shrinks, so councils become less effective and the cost goes up. Well, we're third or fourth now in terms of how much it costs on the council tax. And frankly, the efficiency of this council leaves a lot to be desired. A lot to be desired. There's no reason why they can't get their act together. The first thing they should do is call to account the executive, the people who are sitting on their fat backsides in Eastbourne and have no knowledge of this town whatsoever and no knowledge of this district, and yet they're calling the shots. What a rant. I love these rants. But it's serious. It is serious. Democracy started in this town. It was carried on with Tom Paine. And where are we in 2023? Seeing the end of democracy as we know it. And that's not good enough. It wouldn't be good enough anywhere in this United Kingdom, but it's certainly not good enough for Lewes. So get with it. Start to talk to us. Start to demonstrate that you are democratic and not on one particular political persuasion. You have been warned. We're going to keep an eye on you. Okie dokie. Oh, it's 10:07. Dear. Yes, I'm going to take another break before we come back.